We continue on today with our NHL season preview series. Today we look at the Ottawa Senators as we continue our look through the Atlantic Division teams and previewing the upcoming year. Last year was certainly a year the Senators would like to forget. They did not live up to expectations, but there was a lot of external stuff going on, and they've made a lot more moves, and they're a whole different scenario now. Can this be the year they end a drought and take the rebuild forward into the playoffs? We'll discuss what we think can happen and all the changes coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we preview the upcoming 24-25 NHL season for the Ottawa Senators. Of course, we're continuing our look through the Atlantic Division teams here first as we get started with season previews. Of course, so far in this series, we've done Montreal, Detroit, and Buffalo. Today, we look at Ottawa, and all four of these teams I wanted to purposely do in sequential order, basically because they've all been kind of in the same boat. They've been the four teams in the Atlantic Division who's been out of the playoffs for an extended time. They've all been going through different stages of their rebuilds, and, well, they're all kind of fighting to see if they can't knock some of those top other four teams off their perch and get back into the playoffs. They've been doing it for a while. I know Montreal is ready to take the step, it looks like, to at least be more competitive and make that more interesting. And of course, Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit have been kind of trying to take that next step and move forward for the last year or two. So last year was certainly a disappointing year for the Senators. A lot of people, including internally, thought it was going to be the year they take a big step forward, but instead they did not. And there was a lot going on, which we'll kind of quickly touch on. But in case you're new to this series, essentially what we're going to do is we are going to talk a little bit about last year to recap what happened in the 23-24 campaign, look at some results for the team and individuals, take a look at their cap space, additions, subtractions, any rookies that can make an impact, any players that are going to be, potential contract extensions we could see throughout the year, take a look at their projected lineup and any questions facing this franchise and things we think we'll see throughout the campaign. So the recap 23-24 for Ottawa. Quickly, the record was 37, 41-4, 78 points, 7th in the Atlantic. Not the result they were hoping for or wanted. It resulted in a coaching change. After a while, we saw DJ Smith fired. We saw the GM, Pierre Dorion, fired. Of course, that was not really necessarily results related to the current season. That was largely due to the fact that he really goofed on a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights a couple of years prior. And after a long road of complaining, the Senators were forced to give up a first-round pick. So, of course, new owner Michael Landauer wasn't too fond of that. It was certainly something that was easily avoidable, and Pierre Dorion lost his job over it. But to be honest, I think he would have lost his job before the end of the season anyways. I think a lot of people were under the expectation with new ownership coming in that they would likely clean house, given the fact that this team has been out of the playoffs for, at that point, 6 years and had been rebuilding and looked like they were missing a few pieces still to take that next step, and that they didn't have the right people in place to lead the way, so to speak. So we saw Daniel Alfredsson and Jacques Martin take over partway through the season, and they made a lot of good headway. They created a lot of better habits with the team, and they certainly helped, I think, really acknowledge who was going to be part of the solution moving forward and who wasn't. I know they didn't make any blockbuster deals with their core young players, but they really did make a ton of changes around those players. Lots of subtractions. They really weeded out a lot of players they felt like they needed to change in order to win. They didn't have too much trouble scoring goals, but they were slightly below league average. Could have been a little bit better. 255 goals last year, while giving up 281, 26th best overall in the NHL. So not the greatest ratio by any means, but even some of their top scorers did struggle a little bit at times last year. We even seen their special teams take a step backwards. The power play only clicked at 18% success last year, which was 23rd best the year before. They finished the year in the second half of the year. They were a top 5 and ended up finishing, I think they were 7th or 8th overall with the power play. And they had a great setup. It worked very well. And then it just could not keep it. They made too many changes, and a lot of that, I think, revolved around coaching, and to some degree personnel. Injuries played a role as well. 75% on the PK, which was 26th best. Again, not good enough. So the Senators finished with the top 5 scorers last year. Brady Tkachuk leading the way with 37 goals and 74 points. He had a pretty good year. Timmy Stützle was number 2 with 70 points, coming off a 90-point campaign the year before. A lot of people don't know and understand that Stützle played with multiple injuries throughout the entire campaign. Missed a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. This year, he claims to be fully healthy, but you could see a lot of times he was dealing with a wrist and neck issue last year. Only scored under 20 goals. His wrist was bugging him all year and could not really take a lot of one-timers. Didn't really have a great shot, and you knew something was wrong. So putting up 70 points after a 90-point campaign, a lot of people look at it as a step back, and I guess you could, technically it was, but there's very good reasons for that. Third place was Jake Batherson, 66 points. He had a good, healthy year and was very productive. Claude Giroux continued to be productive as well at 64 points, but that was down a little bit from the year before. And fifth place was a combination of a tie between Tarasenko and Chychrun, both with 41 points. And of course, neither player is back with the team this year. They've currently missed the playoffs for the past 7 seasons. So obviously we saw, like I said, the coaching change mid-season with Jacques Martin coming in, with Daniel Alfredsson on the bench. They really, like I said, made a lot of changes to how things were run, held players a lot more accountable, and they certainly helped the organization determine who was, like I said, part of the group moving forward and who wasn't. They ended up with a new head coach. Jacques Martin is still a consultant for the coaching staff right now, still works with the Senators. Daniel Alfredsson remains on the bench as an assistant coach, but new head coach Travis Green comes in with a whole new perspective and certainly going to make them work hard. We do know that for sure. But there was a lot going on last year between the ownership and the sale of the team not taking place and finalizing until really late in the summer. Essentially got done right before training camp, so the new ownership group wasn't really able to come in and really do much of anything before the season started. So that really wasn't a good thing at all. Major distraction, wondering when that deal was going to close. Obviously, they had some serious injuries again. Like I said, Stützle played through a lot of it. We found out that Thomas Chabot has had a wrist injury for 2 years. And of course, Josh Norris got hurt early in the season and ended up missing big chunk as well. So, I mean, Norris has missed a lot of time. And he's a big part of this team. Former 35 goal scorer, wicket shot on a power play, number 1 or number 2 center, depending on the day. Like, there's lots of things that went wrong for this team last year, which if they can avoid those things, plus the changes they made, lots of reasons to think they should be a whole lot better. The current cap situation gives them $1.1 million in available space, so if they do decide to make another addition, they have that availability. Moving, I normally go over the additions first, but we're going to go through the subtractions because there's way more of them. Like, this team really had a lot of turnover on the back end, on the D-core. They moved out Jacob Chychrun, they moved out Eric Brandstrom, and they moved out Jonas Korpisalo, of course, was the big one in between the pipes. So from the defensive side of the puck, Korpisalo was a major disappointment last year. The goaltending last year was horrible between Korpisalo and Forsberg. They gave up so many goals. I think it was, I can't remember the number, but the number of times they let in the first or second shot was abnormally high, which was a major backbreaker for this team. And I believe one of the stats was that they only had like league average goaltending in about 20-25% of their games. I know that a lot of the deep analytics indicate that if the Senators could have even had league average goaltending in much more of those games, they easily would have been a playoff team. They would have been in one of those wild card spots. So goaltending was a huge part of last season's failure. So Korpisalo moved out, and then on the back end, you've got Brandstrom and Chychrun. Up front, you've got Matthew Joseph was not back, Parker Kelly, Mark Kastelik, Dominic Kubalik, Boris Kachuk, Rourke Chartier, Robbie Harventi, and Yuri Schmeichel. Now, a lot of those guys were bottom 6 forwards. You had a guy like Kubalik, who was kind of up and down in your lineup, but never really produced anywhere, to be honest. Joseph was, again, a guy who went up and down your lineup, but had his moments. He started the year really strong, and there was a lot of rumors around Joseph last year about being traded, because the other thing that happened to the Senators, which I failed to mention, was the Shane Pinto suspension. So you had Stützle playing hurt. Norris is out with a substantial amount of time. Your top defenseman, or one of your top defensemen, Thomas Chabot, hasn't been healthy for 2 years. And then on top of that, Shane Pinto misses 41 games. The top three centers in his organization has been Stützle, Norris, and Pinto. They have played so few games together, it's unreal. You combine that with some poor goaltending and obviously some other pieces that needed to be changed. It's not a wonder why this was an absolute disaster. So on top of that, in the forward group, like I said, you have lots of changes. Chartier had a lot of fourth line minutes. So did Kaslik. So did Kelly. Kaslik, a big boy, but didn't want to finish his checks a lot. They did not like that. Parker Kelly, I thought had a good chance to stay. He actually did better and increased his role, increased his minutes and his production under Martin and Alfredson after the coaching change. I think that was more about a contractual issue more than about the player. I think they were willing to keep Kelly if he was willing to sign for the right amount, but they felt like he was looking for too much and weren't willing to go with there. I mean, on a RFA, they didn't want to qualify him. They obviously wanted him to take a little bit less. He didn't want to do that. Hit the market. Ended up going to Colorado for less money anyways. But he did get I think he got 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't think they were willing to do. So lots of changes. Now, of course, they lose a little bit of speed in Joseph. Obviously, that's going to hurt, but they bring in some good players as well. Now, looking at the additions, the biggest one by far is Linus Ullmark. They pry him out of Boston, and they managed to get the Bruins to take Jonas Korpisalo in the same deal, which was phenomenal for Ottawa. They get a former Vezina Trophy winning goalie. Yes, he needs a contract extension, but it gives them an opportunity to have a solid year, and all indications are right now, I think there's at least a 50-50 chance that he stays. He said all the right things. He's indicated that he's very open to it, and his kids seem to like the idea that they get snow in the winter. He's not opposed to the winter climate in Canada. He knows how much of a hockey crazy country Canada is as well. So, for me, I think Ullmark, if the season goes well and they make him the right offer, I think he'll stay. But it's going to take some big money, obviously, considering his pedigree and what he's done, and some better play in front of him to make sure that happens. I think we're probably looking at least a few months of action to have a good chance of that taking place. But they had Linus Ullmark, which is huge. They had David Perron, Michael Amadio, Nick Cousins, Noah Gregor. Nick Jensen comes over in the chicken trade on the back end. They had some other younger players that are kind of tweeners that probably will start in the minors but have a shot at playing some fourth line minutes between Xavier Bourgault, Jan Jenik, and Adam Gaudette. And of course, they're also coming in on a PTO. They have Nikolai Kulemin, which I don't understand at all. And then Caitlin Addison. Addison maybe has an outside chance of getting a two-way deal. Nikolai Kulemin, I don't see how he makes this team any better at all, but we'll see how he looks in camp, I guess. But they add some good middle six players there with Perron and Amadio, some good bottom six with Cousins, Nick Jensen on the back end. And yes, he's a bit older than Chychrun, but he's a lot stronger defensively. He's a right shot. So it kind of balances that back end out a little bit better. In all honesty, they brought in all these players with a reason. All these guys, Ullmark, of course, is a Vezina Trophy winning goalie. Everybody else they brought in that's going to be a regular at least, like Perron, Amadio, and Cousins, and Jensen, they're all Stanley Cup champions. They're all Cup champions. They all know what it takes to win. They've been through a Stanley Cup run. They come with a good amount of experience, and that was going to be important. And they're all players that are all known for playing hard and have good work ethic. It was also something that was extremely important here as well. In Ottawa, some rookies that you think could have some impact could be Tyler Clevin. I think he'll have a good shot at playing third pair minutes on the left side of the blue line. Matt Sogard hopefully won't get to play too much because I would like to see him spend more time in the minors, but obviously with Ullmark and Forsberg, he's your main call-up should somebody be hurt or need to miss time for any reason. Max Gannett, another right shot defenseman as well, could be a call-up option. He played a little bit of games before. It could be an option there. Zach Ostapchuk and Angus Crookshank are also players that I fully suspect will get games. They got games last year, and they looked pretty decent. So I think depending on how they want to organize that fourth line, there'll certainly be some options there for them. As far as players that you could see contract extensions for throughout the year, on the UFA side of it, you've got Claude Giroux enters the final year of his deal, so an extension's possible there. Same with Linus Ullmark, who they just acquired, and of course Nick Cousins, who came over on a one-year deal, and Travis Hamonic as well. I don't think Hamonic's getting extended. I suspect this is his last year. I'm surprised he wasn't a buyout, to be honest. For Cousins, I would think that there won't be any rush there. Where he signed a one-year deal, he could not extend till at least January anyway, and they can take their time with that and see if long term there's more of a fit there. On the RFA side of it, they are expecting some of their young players that are going to be needing new contracts that could get extensions done throughout the season, whether it be Tyler Clevin, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Ridley Gregg, Noah Gregor, or Angus Crookshank. So all of those guys are pending RFAs as well. Looking at the projected roster, like I said before, the goalies are going to be Ullmark and Forsberg, with Sogard as your number 3. On the back end, and on your blue line, you've got Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, Nick Jensen, and Artem Zub. Those will be your top 4. You got 2 good lefties and 2 good righties. Your third pair, I would suspect, is probably going to be Bernard-Docker and Tyler Clevin, but Hamonic will be there as your number 7. But then you've got guys like Keelan Addison on the PTO or Max Gannett kind of pushing for some time there as well. On the forward group, you're going to have likely a top line. Depending on how they have options to do their lines in a couple of different ways, but you could go with Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux. That's been one of the best lines in the division in hockey, really, when they've played together, but they haven't always been together. They do break them up at times. You get Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, Shane Pinto. I suspect that Norris might be a winger this year. I think that's a possible thing that we could see. I honestly think Shane Pinto's played well enough to be the number 2 center, and then you get Ridley Gregg, who could likely be your number 3. So I personally think they should give it a try. They may or may not. They may still play Norris at center as well as Pinto. So we'll see what they do, but I'd be really curious to see a second line of Pinto in the middle of Batherson and Norris. And then you could have a third line of Ridley Gregg with Amadio and Perron. I think that would be an interesting line. And then your fourth line, you got options. You have guys that are a little bit more experienced when it comes to like Nick Cousins, Noah Gregor, Zach McEwen. Then you get some youngsters like Crookshank, Ostapchuk, Janik pushing for ice time there as well. So they have a lot of options on that fourth line. Like I said, a couple of big things to look for this year, hopefully, is a healthy Timmy Stützle and Josh Norris. That's going to be huge. And a full season of Shane Pinto. You can't win when your top 3 centermen are missing that much time. A lot of people don't seem to understand it about this team. They have not had those 3 together. It's been so little. It's crazy. So the fact that they can all come in and potentially have a full healthy season could be massive for this group. Can Linus Ullmark give them a save or 2? All they needed is a couple of extra saves a game. Can you just get a save? Like, yes, does the team need to be better defensively? Sure. But the difference between what happened in Ottawa last year and what you saw with other teams, even teams like the better teams, even like Boston, for example, is Swayman and Ullmark. Like, the Bruins were not like amazing defensively, but they got bailed out. That's the thing. When you have a goalie back there as good as them, you can make mistakes, and it doesn't always end up in the back of your net. I'm not saying that the Boston was bad and that they were or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Don't change the words, but essentially, like, they could be a team that can take chances. And you don't have to stress as much because every time you make a mistake, it's not going in. But in teams like Ottawa last year, it really felt that way. They couldn't make a mistake. They had to play near perfect hockey, and it's impossible to do. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, can Ullmark just give them a few extra saves? Even if he's not a Vezina Trophy winner, but he's above average or slightly better than above average, that will be such a big improvement for this team. It would be absolutely huge. I like to see them add a little bit more depth on the left side of their blue line. Problem here is you get some 2 really big minute munchers with Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot. You get a rookie like Tyler Clevin, who I think is ready and able to take third pair minutes. But after that, it's a big question mark. They don't have a lot of depth on that left side. I'd really like to see them go and add some, at least one more veteran on a 2-way deal or something, because they don't have a lot of depth there. That could be an area of concern for them down the road. Otherwise, I think they've got a lot better depth in most of their positions. So at the end of the day, like I said, they've got a big change here. They've added a lot of Cup winners. They've added a lot of experience, mixed in with some of these young guys. Everybody coming in ready to roll. will make a big difference. There's no distractions this year. It just feels like a different vibe. I think that if everything goes right and the Senators get good goaltending from Ullmark, they can stay healthy, and you get your top 3 centers in the lineup for a big chunk of the year together, and everybody kind of at least comes close to hitting their expectations, there's no reason why this team can't get into the playoffs. I think they would be able to compete with the top 4, and it may end up having to be a wild card spot, but I can see 5 teams from the Atlantic getting in this year. I really can, and I think they can be one of those 5 teams. I think it could be a case of Ottawa and maybe like a team like Buffalo. I have more confidence in Ottawa and Buffalo right now than I do in Detroit, but we'll see how things go. I just like the looks of their rosters better on paper, but at the end of the day, I think the Sens, obviously, amongst all those teams, have some great experience now between the pipes. They've made some improvements to balance out their D, and they've got a deeper forward group with a good balance of speed, skill, and experience. So let me know what you think of the Ottawa Senators. Is this going to be the year? Can they end the drought? Will they bring back playoff hockey to Canada's capital? Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.